This is a webinar on mastering secure self-service development workflows. My name is Ben. I am the VP of product at Coder, and really excited to talk about how the developer environment ecosystem is evolving over time and what we're thinking about at Coder. You are going to be using the Coder platform as part of this workshop, but really a lot of the key themes, and I'll talk about it in a more general sense, can be applied to any remote development environment. So if you're building your own environment, maybe you can take a few things from this as well, and you don't necessarily have to use Coder. And very, very cool to see some of the chats come in. Seattle, Chicago, Munich, Berlin. Awesome. Very cool. And yeah, we'll talk about the difference of open source and enterprises. We're demoing some of the features. I think most of the things we're going to be using are in the open source, but I have a couple of slides about some of the premium things that we're thinking about in Coder as well. So what we're going to go through today is first some prerequisites, everything you need to know about this session. You're not going to need much to use this workshop if you want to use the product along, so no worries there. We'll talk a little bit about what Coder is and AI development environments as a whole, the problems that we are solving at Coder. Then we'll get right into using an IDE and a code assistant. So we'll use an editor like Cursor to write code and get into a code base. And we'll also start using a code assistant to learn more about the code base and use it to help generate code with us. The next thing we'll do after we get into an IDE is actually spin off autonomous agents without the IDE. So we'll run coding tasks in the background using agents like Claude Code and see some of the AI capabilities that have been added into Coder and other platforms. And then we'll go behind the scenes. And I think this is where a lot of questions and discussion can start to happen, which is how does a platform team or an admin actually set up an environment, and how are you able to get in? And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about best practices for production scale and what it looks like to run thousands of these environments. And this is where we can kind of get into some of the premium capabilities that Coder has to offer. I do see a question about being able to do the workshop later. If you get into contact with us, we can get you access to the environment. We have some temporary accounts that we're going to be sharing. For those temporary accounts, we will be turning off access after the workshop. But if you have a GitHub account, we'll be able to get you access into the workshop environment after. So we can get in contact after about that. Cool. As far as the prerequisites, you can log into your environment now. I'm going to have a few slides, so if you need to switch computers or log into the environment while I'm presenting, by all means, feel free to. All you need for this is really any web browser, a GitHub account. And if you don't have a GitHub account, I'm going to send in the chat right now a link to a spreadsheet with some temporary accounts, username and passwords that you can use to log into the environment. Some people may not have GitHub or want to share their authenticate using GitHub into this platform. By all means, totally fine. The temporary accounts will be shut off after the workshop. Your GitHub accounts, if you log in once, you'll be able to remain and be able to use a workshop environment after the fact as well. So you can use that spreadsheet to log in, and the domain is ai.coder.com, and that's also linked in. And yeah, you will have to, if you're logging in with GitHub, you have to hit that approve button to allow it to access your GitHub account. If you don't want to do that, you can use one of the temporary accounts instead. But yeah, you can authorize that flow. Cool. So what is Coder, and what are the problems that we're trying to solve? Well, the challenge that we've noticed is that most developer environments are pretty unstandardized, meaning developers have many different ways that they actually write code. The first thing that we see is code is on local laptops, where people will download the source code or clone it onto their local laptops. They are often responsible for configuring it themselves. And that creates a lot of issues in the development loop, where developers say, it works on my machine, or it stopped working, or something like that. And from a security standpoint, it's not ideal to have source code on local machines, especially with many contractors cloning and working on repositories. So the developer laptop, for many reasons, is not a fantastic place for development environments, especially because once the code is actually written, then it's getting pushed into version control in the cloud, which is a totally different environment that is standardized. The other way that we see people work around the source code security thing is through virtual desktop. And virtual desktop is good from a security perspective, but not necessarily great from a developer experience perspective. There's often very high latency connecting into a virtual desktop environment. It's a really bad developer experience in many cases, and there's often not a lot of flexibility where developers have to ping IT teams for access to new tools and platforms and credentials. You can obviously continue to use virtual desktop with a cloud environment, but it's much better to essentially have a second environment that you use for software development then. And the final pattern is a lot of developers or DevOps teams will create self-managed VMs because the VMs can have additional privileges and tools installed, but there's still poor governance. It becomes really expensive to manage these disparate VMs, and it results in a lot of wasted time. And you can see that developers are often, pushing code into the cloud anyway. So this fragmentation has a few negative outcomes. The first is developer productivity. Software development is often very frustrating and time intensive. Developers have to wait for tickets to be submitted to be able to get the tools that they need, or their local machine will break. It's operationally inefficient. If you're provisioning VMs, it's very requires tickets and it's pretty costly. And then finally, there's no central governance model. Local development is risky, and especially as AI tools are being added into the environment, it becomes very difficult to secure and standardize environments that developers are working with. I see one question that I can address right now, which is, where is Coder's default region? It's self-hosted, so you can run it in any cloud region you want. And the final thing that we're noticing is AI is really evolving what a developer environment means. So 2 years ago, most developer environments were just the IDE. Now we're seeing a lot of code assistants being used, whether that's GitHub Copilot or GitLab Duo. And that was kind of the first stage of AI augmented development. Now, a lot of the users that we work with are using AI assisted IDEs like Cursor or Windsurf or Zed, which are new editors that have AI built in essentially from the beginning. These are often forks of VS Code, but have AI capabilities built in. And now the next thing that everyone's talking about and is becoming an extremely interesting model is AI coding agents. And we think that AI coding agents create this inflection point where platform teams are either forced to standardize developer environments in which they can see a lot of productivity benefits, or if these agents run locally, there's a lot of risks to it. So as AI agents are being introduced and can write more and more code, we think it's really important for organizations to standardize and provide platforms around these environments. So that's where a product like Coder comes in. It essentially allows developers to self-serve any environment that they need and connect to that environment through a browser or a desktop IDE. So the source code is no longer on the device itself. As part of this workshop, you'll see how this actually works. And instead, the dev environment is in your cloud, entirely self-hosted, so in whatever region you need, with all of the tools and dependencies that it needs, and source code being secure. So the results of this is it's a much better developer experience. Developers and AI agents can self-serve environments whenever they need through the platform. All workspaces are defined as code, which in Coder's case is through Terraform for the infrastructure as code, and then the dev container specification for the environment itself. Developer experience is much better. Developers are more likely to stick around and use these environments. They're pre-configured and pre-secured, meaning developers don't need to do any configuration themselves. And then finally, they're isolated from your local machine. So source code is not running on your local machine. You don't have to install tools. And AI agents that are running have clear boundaries, preventing them from doing things that they probably shouldn't do within an organization. So when we're talking about AI agents like Claude Code, we think that two things are really important, primarily context and control. If you take an AI agent and run it in a completely isolated environment. It doesn't have any of the knowledge, dev tools, or repos that it needs to actually get its job done. So we think it's really important to provide AI agents with context on what repos it's working on, what languages it has, and essentially enough information for an agent to become productive and effective in accomplishing a task. Second is security. And we are working on a feature called Boundaries, which isolates agents in a sandbox and limits agents only to access what they need. So from a technical standpoint, this means establishing network firewalls. When we work with customers like Anthropic, and when Anthropic isolates their coding agents, they essentially limit them from accessing the internet in many cases. And there's a number of other permissions and IAM controls that you need to add to coding agents to let them to do what they need. And then finally, optimization is incredibly important too. These things are expensive. They're spinning up on cloud resources. They're using AI tokens. So it's really important to be able to have fine-grained controls on how much developers can spend with agents, what models are being used, and essentially ensuring the best results occur. So this is the premium feature that I was talking about earlier. We call it boundaries, and this is a somewhat new term in development environments where a coding agent has less permissions than a developer inside of a specific environment. So a developer may be able to have full access to the repo, the network, and file system, whereas a coding agent, while it is important to have access to some tools in order to finish a task, it shouldn't have access to be able to do things like delete a repository, access the NPM registry to pull potentially insecure packages, or to delete the file system. So we are building out functionality inside of these environments that can prevent agents from doing specific things, where the developer has a separate set of permissions and access in the environment. You can kind of think of it as like a Docker, but for agents itself. And I think important thing to remember when you're building out a platform like this is we're not here to replace engineers with AI coding agents. We're really interested in figuring out what types of infrastructure is needed for this next kind of evolution in software development. But we don't plan on saying, this is your AI coworker and you no longer need developers. It's really about building out an infrastructure platform that can serve the next kind of generation of use cases, which we believe to be coding agents writing code. So we plan to continue supporting developer environments with developers doing the majority of the work, as well as lightweight sandbox environments for agents to do things like code reviews or triage of bugs and things like that. So with that, we're actually just going to get right into the workshop, and I can show you some of the functionality that we have in Coder. So to start, the website is ai.coder.com. If people are still tuning in, I just sent out in the Zoom chat again instructions on how to get there, as well as temporary accounts if you don't want to use GitHub. What this looks like in the sheet, and it seems like people have already started using it, is a pretty casual system. Just take a username and password. Be sure to put it in use if you're using this. We don't anticipate the people, please don't put any sensitive data on this. We have a big disclaimer on this. This is for, playing around and using a lot of the capabilities yourself. And yeah, now let's walk through it. So you should see three things in the top: workspaces, templates, and tasks. The first thing that we're going to do is use an editor or use an IDE. So go to the new workspace section here, and you could use any of these. I would suggest you use the real world app. You can build a new application from scratch. A lot of people call this vibe coding. I think that it's a lot more important to show how AI can be used onboarding to a more real life kind of application, as opposed to building something from scratch. So click real world app. You should get to this new create workspace page. You can give this workspace any name you want. I'm going to name it workspace 1. And you can optionally link your GitHub. You don't have to. I'm going to choose not to. And you are given a few options. And these are options that the platform admin makes available to the developers. So in this case, there's a concept called presets. I have this real world app preset set, but you can imagine additional apps could be added on and supported here. You can give it a prompt. We'll actually leave this prompt blank for the time being. We'll get to that a little bit later. And you can also pick a JetBrains editor. And this is a good kind of showcase of the kind of one thing that we really care about when we build Coder, which is developer choice. We want people to be able to pick which editors and applications they want to use. And then finally, there's a location. And there was a question earlier about what region is Coder primarily deployed in. Coder is entirely self-hosted. So this demo environment that you're logging into has support for 3 different regions. But if you were to deploy Coder yourself, you could add support for different locations and regions. This is one of the premium features in Coder, though, is the multi-region support. Cool. So with that, we will create a workspace. And what's happening in the background here is it's a Terraform operation. The platform admin is able to create these templates with Terraform, and the developer just interacts it with a form. So the developer doesn't write any Terraform, but this allows the admin to customize the region, as well as what type of infrastructure is being provisioned. In this case, it's a Kubernetes pod, if you look closely in the logs. And you'll see a number of buttons here, as well as an initialization script that's running. This initialization script is installing additional packages and tools that are needed for the developer environment. We also have a feature called pre-builds, which maintains a warm pool of these environments. So, excuse me, get some water. Pre-builds maintains a warm pool of these environments so that the startup time is a lot quicker. And we think that as agents are spinning up isolated workspaces for each task, the startup time is going to become extremely important as far as how a platform should perform. So we're looking at additional ways to kind of tune and improve the startup time. But as you can see, it's installing some packages with apt here. We actually can just hop into the IDE if we want to and start poking around. So I'm going to click on Code Server. And the reason I'm using Code Server is it's the easiest editor to use. It's completely browser-based. So you don't have to install any additional tools. And it's going to have an AI assistant pre-installed in it. So I can start asking you questions. So for the sake of this demo, we'll be using Code Server. However, you can use any editor here, and you can also pre-configure any editor for development as well. So let's click into Code Server. And the first thing that you'll notice is this is not an empty IDE. There is already a project cloned here. And this is just one of the benefits of a standardized developer environment platform like Coder is, the project is already cloned. And if I needed to, do any type of development too, for example, Java is already installed, Node is already installed, Python is already installed. And that's just for this environment. You can specify the different versions and languages and tools as part of the template and as part of the image. So it's up to the admin which tools and repos are pre-baked into the environment itself. But that's not really what I wanted to show. What I wanted to show is some of the AI capabilities. So we've seen platforms like Coder being used a lot recently.
I think I cannot hear you. Yeah, I don't know if people can hear you. Should we? That's good.
Can you
That's good.
Can you hear me
now?
now?
I can hear you again. Yes, perfect.
Fantastic.
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Cool.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries at all. Cool. So as I was saying, we're seeing the platforms like Coder being used a lot more for AI workshops where, not every developer is necessarily familiar with AI tools yet. There's a lot of nuances and different use cases for how to use AI. And it often requires a lot of steps to get started using AI too. You have to, download an extension or configure an account or work with API tokens. So, one benefit of Coder is not only can it pre-install languages, but it can also pre-install AI tools. So in the sidebar here, we have Rue Code, which is one of my favorite AI assistants because it's very general purpose. You can use it with any LLM. So you can use it with a local or an on-prem LLM, or you can use it with an LLM gateway, such as Amazon Bedrock or or like GCP, Vertex AI, or you can just use it directly with something like OpenAI. So there's lots of options. And in this case, it's already configured and it's using Anthropic through Coder's LLM gateway. And one of the most common use cases we've seen for AI is onboarding and getting more familiar with the code base. So the question I'm going to ask this assistant is basically, walk me through this code base. And to be super clear, Rue code is not something that we've developed at Coder. And there's a number of other assistants such as GitHub Copilot or Amazon Q that are supported as well. The benefit that Coder provides is essentially pre-configuring whatever assistant your organization wants to use. So it's starting to learn about like what it is. It's set a to-do list. I'm actually going to set it to auto approve so that it can run all of these things. The other cool thing about having a remote environment is there's a lot less risk in an agent doing something that it shouldn't, because it's not going to it's not going to do anything on my local computer, and it's running in an isolated environment with its own permission structure as well. So it's reading all these files. Of course, AI will run into some errors as well, but it is going to give me a better sense of kind of what's going on in the project itself. And what this app actually is too, while it works on this, is it's a project called Real World. And Real World is really cool in that it's a bunch of demo apps written in different languages and different tools and different frameworks. So a cool thing that you can do with an agent is actually ask it to rewrite its backend in a different language, or to add improved documentation or whatnot. So let's see how it's doing. It's analyzing the front end. It's analyzing the back end, and yeah, just a great kind of example of how you can start to use AI in your workflow to get familiar with the code base. Yeah, it's kind of struggling here, which is surprising. Let's see. Fantastic. Cool. So it's walking through what the front end service is, how it does articles, and here's a good kind of time to show another feature in Coder, which is preview applications too. So we've looked at the code base, but we haven't actually seen the app itself. If we hit this preview your app button back on the workspace, it will actually show you what the application is. And it's kind of like a blog. It's like a medium.com clone. So, there's specific blog posts you can go to. There's a concept of accounts. Because this is a demo app, I just put the username and password in here. And you'll notice that it's a completely functional application running inside of the environment. So we can sign in and do whatever we need to in the application. Cool. So that's an example of using a kind of built-in IDE assistant with Coder. The next thing I wanted to walk through is this concept of running a background agent or a background task. And for this, we're going to go over into the tasks section. And the idea of tasks is kicking off something where the developer does not ever or does not always need to be in the editor. And instead, a coding agent can start to do things for them. So let's switch the template here. Instead of build from scratch, we'll go into the real world app again. I think it's just a lot better to do these demos with a real application. And let's ask it to rewrite the backend for this in Go. And you can see here, this says it's Angular and Django, which is like Python based. And, we don't have to do a very complex task like this. You'll notice that the task that I did below here is, write an end-to-end task for the sign-up flow. So that's, I think, a more bite-sized task that an agent can do. But let's kick off this rewrite in Go.
You have a few comments. Well, one question and a comment. How does the preview work? It's only useful for web apps, I'm correct?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So we have support for desktop applications as well, where it shows a full virtual desktop session embedded into Coder as well. So people can do desktop app development with Coder. With that being said, I think web app development is one of the best use cases for Coder, at least for the preview. And if you're building, CLI based applications, you can do it as well. But we support desktop apps through it would be a separate application here. So instead of saying like preview your app, it would say like full desktop. And yeah, that's how you could do stuff besides just web apps. I do see another thing in the chat about AI.coder.com not working. The URL that Samit sent is the right one. So it's possible that you have like a firewall configuration or something on your network that's not working, but it seems to be working for me. Cool. So these tasks sometimes take a while to spin up. And we're working on making this interface better in Coder. So a release coming very soon will have a better state. But if you actually hit View Workspace, you can see that under the hood, it's actually a full workspace that is powering this. And I think this is a really interesting component, which is even as you're running these agents, they still need access to a lot of the same tools and environment config that people do. And similarly, it can be really beneficial as the agent works to then move into an editor to complete the task. So this is what the tasks view looks like once it's loaded. And in this case, what's running is not Rue code, but a CLI-based agent like Claude Code. So Claude Code is running here. I have a chat, so if I wanted to interrupt it, I could interrupt it. But I'm actually going to let it do all of its to-dos, where it's going through the backend structure or whatnot. But if I wanted to work alongside the agent or review its code, I could review it through this preview screen. I could go into the web editor, or I could open it locally using one of the editors that I like to use, such as Cursor, VS Code, or Windsurf. So we want to support flows that run entirely in the background, as well as flows that involve a developer kind of reviewing the code or using the agent as part of its workflow as well. So we can go back, and it's currently working on designing the product structure for this task. So the next thing I kind of wanted to show as this agent is working is kind of this multitasking flow, right? So you can actually spin up multiple tasks at once. You can switch between them. This one wrote some end-to-end tests, and it's finished it. So if I go into code server and go into the Git view, I can actually review all of the code that it's written so far. Grab another sip of water. Cool. The next thing that I wanted to show actually is the underlying template for how this is all working under the hood. I know that all of you have a platform engineering background and would typically be someone building out the infrastructure for something like this rather than being the end user. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log out of my user account, and I'm going to log into my admin account with GitHub. Through the admin account, I can actually go into one of these templates. I'll go into this Rue code one that I've been working on, and I'll show you everything that was involved in configuring this. So first, there's two variables here. These variables are essentially secrets that are being mounted into the workspace, and it's giving the agent a lightweight GitHub identity that's separate from the user's identity, so that it can run commits, read files, but it can't do anything particularly destructive. So when I was talking about boundaries, this is one example of giving the coding agent that's running in the background different boundaries from what the developer can do. The second thing that you'll see here is our Claude Code module. And this is essentially showing how Coder can support running any agent on infrastructure. So in this case, we have Claude Code, but I link to our registry, which I will talk about a little bit more, where you can actually, this is what we want to see, where you can see all the different agents that we currently support. And if you don't see an agent that you like here, or if you want to make your own coding agent or something like that, you can publish a module to the registry or customize it so you can support your own. So Claude Code, we have Goose, we have Codex, which is by OpenAI, and a number of different agents that all run in the background with the same experience. And I can send this example code as well for you to review. Or actually, if you want to review it now, how about I just put it in the chat? Let's see. Cool. So if you wanted to follow along, it's not exactly the same. It's a more generic example, but it does use the real world app still and shows a lot of the things being used. So this is an example of it running some scripts on behalf of the user itself. Here is a preset. So that gives it framing for how to work with a specific app. This is actually more of a generic instructions on how to work with an application. There's very little references to the actual app at play here. The agent tends to figure out most of it itself. Here, you may be familiar with MCP, which is a way to add additional tools to the agent. You can pre-configure MCP tools on behalf of the developer. So this is adding the Playwright MCP, which will allow the agent to do its tests itself, as well as a desktop commander MCP. This is one that helps it run commands a little bit more efficiently in the background. Everything else here isn't super interesting. We have coder parameters. These are the prompts that developers saw, or when you created your workspace, these are the prompts in the forms that you saw, where you got to pick things like which image do you want to use? Or there was one that we did where it asked you what location you want to run this in. That's all defined as part of the template that the admin can edit. So the admin can give developers all of these choices. Let's go down a little bit more. This is some coder specifics around starting an agent in the workspace so that it can talk to you. Here's our support for the IDE. So when we were talking about having Rue pre-configured, this is how you can pre-configure the Rue code to do things like that. Where do you configure your choice of model? That would be in the Claude Code module. So this is where we're using Anthropic's Claude Code. And then I think somewhere in this, we specify the specific model for Rue code as well. So in Rue code, we also are using Claude, but you would be able to specify it here as well. And in our case, we're using an LLM gateway. So we're using light LLM. But if you used something like Bedrock as well, you could point it to Bedrock. Here's where it gets really interesting, though, which is the actual infrastructure. And this is where coder or other CDs really matter. Is you still have to define the cloud infrastructure that you're spinning up. So here in Terraform, we are actually defining the definition of the environment, in which case this is a Kubernetes pod. So we can pick which namespace it goes into. We're giving it a name based on the workspace owner's name, as well as the workspace name itself. We're adding, very specific Kubernetes things to the pod spec, such as a node selector, tolerations, and here's where the image is defined as well. So the image is actually what includes the dev tools pre-installed. The image that we are using is one based on Microsoft's image that has a bunch of universal dev containers, but you could also make this configurable by the developer. So the developer could specify an image that they have, or as a platform team, you can specify a number of different images as well. And I think that's it, basically. So you can see the editors as well. So this is how VS Code is configured, or Windsurf. And these are all modules in the registry as well. So if you had a different editor you wanted to add support for, that would just be through the coder registry. Cool. The final thing I wanted to show, and this is something that I just got a new computer and I haven't tried yet, so I'm hoping it'll work, is the integration with desktop IDEs as well. So one of these is probably running. Oh, I'm on a different account. Let me log into my other account.
Ben, I think there's a question.
Yeah.
Chris When you mentioned kicking off multiple tasks, how do you envision teams working on same code base and maybe on the same feature?
Yeah, it's a great question. So because each developer has an isolated environment for the tasks, we don't actually anticipate many conflicts. So it'd be similar to each developer having their own computer. It's similar with these virtual environments. So when a developer is kicking off multiple tasks, each task will work in a feature branch in Git, and then create a pull request as part of like an artifact. So we imagine that the kind of normal Git flow with multiple developers working will be extended to agents as well. I see another question. Can you share all the tools you use to build this platform end to end? Yes, we can. So we're actually in the process of publishing an open source Terraform kind of reference architecture for this entire demo environment. So if you wanted to spin up this exact replica of a demo environment, we would be sharing the Terraform for it. In the meantime, we have documentation at coder.com/docs, which I will show in a second, where you can learn how to install Coder as well as this example template. And really most of what I'm showing is a bare install of Coder plus this real world template. We've only really used one template in Coder, and that's it. But it can get very complex with different Kubernetes namespaces and node selectors and stuff as you're preparing for production, which is why we wanted to open source this entire thing. So I don't think we have that today for this workshop, but we will be publishing it very shortly. So if you go to our GitHub and just give us a star or a follow on GitHub, you'll get notified when that reference architecture comes out. Another question, how would you compare this approach to something like local stack? I think that there's a time and a place for local development. I think that with things like AI agents running in the background, however, running a more kind of production-like copy of infrastructure with Terraform is more beneficial. For starters, and this is pretty basic, but if I was to close my laptop, these agents would continue working. And over time, as models and agents get more effective, I imagine that agents will essentially be working at night to help, triage issues, help with documentation, and a number of other tasks. So a cloud environment is going to become really important for that, or an on-prem environment, right? However, there's definitely a case to be made for doing things on local hardware, especially because local hardware is getting better, and especially also because there's use cases like mobile development and Android development that you really want a close and tight inner loop. And in that case, you may use something like local stack to spin up some kind of reference architecture that works similarly. Some features that we're building into Coder will be it's kind of like a shared infrastructure as well. So I imagine kind of like a hybrid approach where some parts of the stack are local and other parts of the stack are running and powered by Coder. And yeah, you get a lot of security benefits if it's running as well. You can kind of define your own firewalls and stuff.
I see you have another question regarding pricing and if there are any limits in the app.
Yeah, absolutely. The pricing is per user right now. And if you go to coder.com/pricing, you can kind of reach out to our team. The limits between open source and enterprise are anything that's developer experience focused. So being, really easy to get into a task, workspaces, the IDEs, the agents, that's all open source. Anything around scaling and administering and governing is in enterprise. So if you have thousands of developers, you will probably want role-based access control or policies based on who can access, or policies based on how much developers can spend, cost controls, and all of those things are in the enterprise version. So we actually have a pretty good comparison on what is in the open source versus enterprise. But if you wanted to try the open source, you could just try it without contacting us. Yeah, I'll get in contact with you once we send that once we finish that like reference architecture. That'd be awesome. Well, what else did I want to show? Oh, I wanted to show cursor. Cool. So a flow that we imagine happening quite a bit is an agent maybe kicks off a task and then the developer wants to finish it using their editor of choice. So we have an open locally button, and this should work if you have Cursor installed locally or VS Code or any of these. I'm going to click Cursor. It's going to open a prompt to open Cursor, and it's going to ask me if it wants to install the Coder extension. And it uses the Coder extension to kind of facilitate a remote connection from your local machine into the remote environment. So I will give it permission to install the Coder extension. You can see it's establishing an SSH-like connection. It's actually not SSH. It uses a tunnel. And now you can see I'm connected in the environment. So the first thing I want to show is this is not my local environment. If I run like uname, for example, this is Linux, but I'm on a MacBook. This is connected into the remote environment. The second thing you'll notice is when I go to open folder, I can open, where is it? I think it's like projects. Where is it actually? Coder. Projects, there it is. Cool. And this can be configured. Probably should have been for the workshop, but the project is pre-cloned, and I can get started working on it immediately. So if I wanted to do a preview environment through this as well, I'd be able to use the port forwarding capabilities to do that. So let's see if it connects. Well, we can check on that in a second. We did this. We reviewed the template and sent out a link to an example template, so you can see kind of what the infrastructure is like for this. I wanted to share some additional resources as well. Talked about some of these throughout the session, but we have a Discord. So if you go to coder.com/chat, you can chat with us and get help and questions if you need to use Coder. We have docs, which can walk you through how to install the community edition. Most of what we used today was part of the community edition and doesn't require a license. We do have a sales team and a premium version with a lot of the security and governance. So if you wanted to get in contact with us for that, you could do so. And our registry is where you're going to find a lot of the examples that we talked about today, which was the agents, the infrastructure such as Kubernetes and pre-made modules. So to show the registry in a little bit more detail, there's two concepts. There's modules, which is more of like the IDEs and agents, and templates, which is the infrastructure. So if you wanted to, use EC2 instead of Kubernetes, for example, you would be able to review the template for Coder itself, and it gives you instructions on how you would use this with Coder. So that's the Coder registry. Let's check on Cursor, and let's give this a reload. It's just working too. Well, I can show you what it would be like if someone was using Coder directly from the IDE. You can see all of your workspaces here, all connect into this one. And it'll maybe work. I don't know. I just installed Cursor, so it's possible I have something not working. I use Windsurf and VS Code more. But the flow here is basically a developer can use their local editor to do development if they wanted to as well. Cool. So with that was all I really wanted to show. We do have plenty of time, so feel free to continue poking around in the workshop environment. And if you have any additional questions that we aren't able to cover today, feel free to ask them in our Discord. But yeah, maybe we'll keep it open for another 5 minutes or so if people have specific questions.
Yes, thank you, Ben. Okay, guys, let's jump into the Q&A. Do you have any questions? Remember to share them either in the chat or in the Q&A section. Let's give it a minute. Okay. I see some questions popping. Does the Pro version of Coder offer access to Pro version of or cursors and other tools?
Not yet, no. So you bring your own license for the editors like Cursor and JetBrains and whatnot. You can configure Coder to work with that license server. So if you had a premium license of those, but no, it's still expected that if you're using the Pro version of one of those editors, you'd also have to buy something like Cursor.
The next question is, are you all located in SLC?
I'm gonna need help here. I don't know, as Salt Lake City, is that SLC? I'm in Austin, Texas. If that's the question, or I don't, if maybe SLC is an acronym, I don't know. Yeah, no, I'm in Austin, Texas. But Coder is all over. We have people all over the world.
So I guess I don't know if it's connected to what you just answered. Any plans for SaaS solution located in Europe?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So at Coder, we're really focused on like self-hosted instances, so people can run and deploy it on their own infrastructure. With that being said, we are always open to conversations with kind of cloud providers or other people looking to partner and offer Coder as a managed service in different regions. So that's something we would be interested in. But as far as what we do at Coder, we always plan on having just the self-hosted aspect.
Thank you. Someone is asking if the lab is going to be available for some more time.
Yeah, we plan on keeping the lab environment open for the future, and you should be able to log into GitHub throughout like the end of the day, I think. And then we're going to turn off additional GitHub logins. So if you want us to add your GitHub handle, can you put it in like the Zoom chat, and we'll just be sure to add that in, and then you'll be able to access it after the fact.
Perfect. Okay, I see more questions coming. How are you managing sensitive credentials? You show that you're using Terraform to provision environments. I suppose you consider HashiCorp, Vault, or cloud provider secret managers. Any examples you have in OSS?
Yeah, absolutely. So the example that I showed with the GitHub token was it's like centrally managed GitHub token encoder. That's not what we see a lot of people do. They'll typically use secrets through a cloud secret store or through Kubernetes and mount those secrets in. So in our registry, actually, we have an example, which is open source for using Vault. And there's a number of different authentication methods for Vault that you can use. I think the JWT one is the most common one. So it's very common for people to integrate Coder with a cloud secret store as well.
Thank you. I think this is a question from Muhammad. Does your platform adhere or is it certified or compliant with the SOC, PCI, GDPR, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. So as a company, we are SOC and GDPR compliant. With Coder being self-hosted, there's no data that we manage. So data would all be managed by the organization or the platform team. So we don't access any PII at Coder at all. We just provide the software. So by nature, that makes it compliant with other policies, as long as your organization is following those policies with how you're managing your infrastructure clusters. So that's part of the reason why we aren't SaaS based, is that our customers can then deploy us in to their infrastructure and maintain compliance.
Thank you. Any more questions, guys? Okay,
cool. I see a lot of GitHubs being sent too, so we'll be sure to add you all in, and then you'll be able to access the environment after the fact too.
Yeah, I'll make sure to save them. So yeah, guys, well, I don't know if any questions will come up, but just to clarify, I see some questions regarding if anyone's gonna get the slides or the recording. You will get them, no worries. Just make sure to check the email you register with, and you will receive a link to this. So